This week on Athletics World Weekly, China's largest city, Shanghai, is the scene of the 17th annual Shanghai International Marathon. Canada's largest city, Toronto, is the host of elite-level runners for the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon. The North Italian city of Torino is host of the Maratona di Torino, the Turin Marathon. Santander, Hungary is the cold and snowy setting for the SPAR European Cross-Country Championships. Boulogne-Billancourt, France is the destination for the 14th annual Boulogne-Billancourt Half Marathon. That and so much more this week on Athletics World Weekly. Athletics World Weekly's first stop is the sprawling Canadian metropolis of Toronto, largest city in the country and host of more than 25,000 runners. The 13th edition of the road race featured a cold and rainy start that greeted elite-level athletes and their fun running companions alike. But however different their abilities, they all aspire to the same goal: complete the 42-kilometer distance in personal record time.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon is an IAAF Silver Label event and one of two marathons contested in Toronto. The Scotiabank Marathon, however, is the class of the two marathons. Its size and fast times are the rule of judgment. A fast 2:07:57 is the course standard and also the Canadian all-comers record. This fantastic time was set 2 years ago and is the current target for this pack of East Africans. The group is hoping to go under that time and pick up an extra 25,000 Canadian dollars as a reward and bonus. The 25,000-strong backing pack are off to a rainy record attempt. However, the rain soon stopped and the field settled into a wet, humid slog as the temperatures climbed to 18 degrees centigrade or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. In the last kilometers, the Kenyan duo of Gilbert Yegan and John Kiprotich, both of whom have run under 2:07 for the distance, were being tracked by the Ethiopian Salah Warga, who unexpectedly was among the leaders at the late stages. Warga broke away at the 40-kilometer mark when Kiprotich made this huge mistake at the last water station. It was at this moment Warga sensed his chance and accelerated hard in an effort to take advantage of one of the worst tactical efforts ever seen in an elite-level marathon. Kiprotich missed his water bottles earlier and must have been desperate to risk such a move in such a late stage of the race. Meanwhile, Yegan, unwilling or more likely unable to respond to the closing kilometer sprint of Warga, would have to sit back and watch the last few meters from the seat of second place. Warga prevailed in a time of 2:10:35, well off the course record, but he established another first. He became the first Ethiopian to win the Toronto Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon. Meanwhile, Yegan was robbed of second place by the fast-closing Kiplimo Kumatai, who a few minutes before had been secure in fourth place. On the women's side, more last kilometer drama was in store as the race leader, Kenyan Agnes Kiprop, could not hold off New Zealand's fast-charging Mary Davies. The 30-year-old Davies, a former All-American at Oklahoma State University, although a New Zealand citizen, lives and trains in the Canadian capital of Ottawa and was cheered on as a local hero. Her conservative early race strategy didn't include a top 3 finish, let alone a first place, but with 10 kilometers to go, she increased her tempo and was able to make up ground on the fading Kenyans. She crossed the line in a surprise victory and personal best time of 2:28.56. Kiprop was second in 2:29.32. China's largest city, Shanghai, is the scene of the 17th annual Shanghai International Marathon. The start of the Shanghai Marathon is the signal for more than 18,000 runners who will take a running 42-kilometer tour through China's largest city. Right from the start, a group of four, two from Kenya, Teferi Kebede of Ethiopia, and South African Stephen Makoka seized the front position as Kenyan Stanley Biwott in yellow pushed the pace. The 18,000 runners taking part in this 7th Shanghai Annual Marathon are part of a larger group of 53,000 that compete in a series of running events throughout the Shanghai Running Weekend. Enthusiastic crowds line the city streets, creating an impressive world marathon stage. Back at the head of the pack, Biwott, the star of the field after running a stellar 2:05 April Rome Marathon, made his break with 2 kilometers left in the race. Biwott was in Shanghai trying to find a late fall race after missing the canceled New York City Marathon. His late race surge tactic looked impressive at first, but ultimately he did not shake the likes of Kebede in orange or Kenyan Sylvester Temet in black. In the home stretch, it was Temet who provided the decisive sprint at the finish, while Kebede also feasted on Biwott and picked up an extra $10,000 more in second-place prize earnings for his finish line speed. Athletics World Weekly moves west. Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and the TCS Amsterdam Marathon. Close to 25,000 people responded to the starting line gun, with close to 13,000 participants running the full marathon. Generally favorable conditions such as the flat Amsterdam course, gray skies, and an 11 degrees centigrade temperature reading creates an atmosphere that attracts many of the world's fastest breakthrough runners looking for a late fall marathon. This year, race organizers focused on breaking the 2-year-old course record of 2:05.41 and brought back Steven Chebet, the man who placed second 2 years ago on that record-setting day. A big pack led by several pacemakers went out really fast as expected, racking up a 15-minute 5K and picked up the pace with a 29:35 10K. The plan of this race was to produce not only a course record, but a Dutch all-comers record as well. At this moment, things were right on schedule. By the halfway point, the pack had dropped only 3 runners from the first 10K, as a host of formidable names like Peter Karui, Essa Rashid, Faesa Bekele were looking like contenders to Chebet's prize. At 35 kilometers, it was down to Chebet and 4 others, but the 35 to 40 kilometer phase of the race would prove to be Chebet's decisive battleground, as he scorched an impossible to beat 14-19 5-kilometer split, leaving everyone else behind. He reached the 40 kilometer mark as a lone figure in 1:59.16. After that blistering late race 5K surge, Chebet's victory was secured as he cruised into the 1928 Amsterdam Olympic Stadium in first and on record schedule. He finished in 2:05.41, a new course record and a new Netherlands all-comers marathon record, right on schedule. Ethiopia's Olympic 10,000-meter gold medalist and 15-kilometer and 5,000-meter world record holder Tirinish Dibaba was on hand to face Olympic marathon gold medalist Tiki Galena in the 29th Zevenheuvelen Loop, or the Seven Hills 15-kilometer classic. The men's race, like the ladies, featured 15-kilometer world record holder Leonard Coleman, who set the record of 41:13 2 years ago on this hilly course. In the men's race, a leading group of 5 contenders featuring Coleman, Nicholas Kipkemboy, and compatriot Kennedy Kumaitai passed the 5-kilometer marker in 13:57. Fast, but raising doubt, the chance of breaking the course and world record was nearly gone. The women's race in the beginning sported a trio of Dibaba, Tiki Galena, and Galeta Burka, running as a pack until Burka was dropped after a quick 15:55 first 5K. It was now Galena and Kenyan Beatrice Mutai in the lead pack mix. Dibaba passed the 10 kilometers in 31:40, nearly a half minute ahead of second, as the marathon legs of Galena were no match for Dibaba's 10K dominance on this course. Back on the men's front, Kipkemboy and Coleman took control of the race, passing 10 kilometers in 27:59. But Kipkemboy would display his real strength in the final 5 kilometers as he dropped the struggling Coleman at 12 kilometers with this big surge, gaining 16 seconds on second place in the final 3 kilometers to record this rousing victory in 42:01. Dibaba raced to an unchallenged victory in the final kilometers, as she went on to defeat Galena by a 61-second margin. Dibaba recorded a 47:08 winning time, a long way off her record performance of 46:28 in 2009, but a victory just the same. Herenberg, the Netherlands, is the site of the 17th annual Pfixx Solo Montferland 15-kilometer run, which featured the fastest marathoner of the year, Geoffrey Mutai of Kenya, facing returning champion and course record holder Philip Langat. The women's race turned out to be a one-woman show as 25-year-old Ethiopian Atseide Besa won by 41 seconds ahead of second-place Kenyan Lucy Macharia. Back on the men's side, by 10 kilometers, it was Mutai in orange dueling it out with Langat, as in Boston last June. But again, Mutai proved he is the king as the winner of New York, Boston, and the Berlin marathons. He transferred the provenance of Langat's year-old record as he crossed the line victorious in a new course record time of 42:25. Langat, 1 second behind, also went under the old course record. Budapest, Hungary is the scene of a sub-0 degree start of the women's 8,050-meter senior race of the European Cross-Country Championships. The blanket of snow and freezing temperatures created a perfect winter running championships event atmosphere as a large pack of reluctant athletes were finally driven to task by Ireland's Fionnuala Britton. Britain grabbed the lead reins of the race at the halfway point, leading a breakaway group of 7 athletes through the tricky course, which included a windmill and a run right through an old barn. Cross-country indeed. Portugal's Ana Dote Felix was right on Britain's shoulder, as was Italy's Nadia Ejafini, Belgium's Almanesh Palette, and the Netherlands' Adriana Herzog. Coming into the final straight, the Irish leader surged again in an effort to break away from the European 10,000-meter champion Felix, who seemed to be gaining momentum. But Britain was not to be denied the crown of the European Cross-Country Championships this year, as she maintained form and crossed the line in a winning time of 27:45, with Felix taking second. Boulogne-Billancourt, France, is the setting for the annual half marathon that carries the city's name. The 16th edition of this race featured more than 5,000 runners and is the 3rd largest half marathon in France. This year's rainy conditions created a slippery footing over the city streets, which ruined any chance of breaking the much talked about 1-hour barrier. The leading group was composed of a number of East Africans, with Ethiopians touted as the favorites. But by 30 kilometers, it was the last-minute replacement, the practically unknown Tesfailing Mahari, who would be at the front, making a claim for world-class attention. But on Mahari's case was Kenyan Justice Moringa, who seemed to surprise the Ethiopian as he closed the gap of such a big surge. Moringa, a 1:01:07 half marathoner, should have been able to put Mahari away according to the past result, but today was Mahari's, as he launched a final surge the Kenyan couldn't match. Mahari took the victory on 1:01.17. Maranga holds on to second. On the women's side, Ethiopian Kiros Gabriel Selassie won in 1:11.11. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week on Athletics World Weekly.